Thank you. My name is Derek Ashmore. I'm the Agentic AI Enablement Principal for Asperitas Consulting, but I'm not much for titles. You could call me Possum King. I don't care about that. Basically, I'm going to start off with a story. In and about July, I happened upon a blog post from Adrian Cockcroft. And I don't know if you know him, but I've been following him since the 90s. And yes, that makes me old. Essentially, he turned me on to this Claude-Flow thing. All right. And he basically took Claude-Flow, which runs a team of Claude-Code agents under the covers, manages the team so that you don't have to. All right. And he basically described how he used it to build a new application that he was going to build. And since I've been following Mr. Cockcroft for a couple of decades, I basically followed suit. So I installed Claude-Flow and Claude-Code, and I took a complex Golang project that I wanted to make significant enhancements to. And I followed his lead, all right? I basically, in this world, one of the things that you do is you don't just say, okay, Claude-Flow, go do this. You plan it first. You piece apart the plan to make sure that your instructions to Claude-Code and Claude-Flow are coherent, and they do what you want, and you don't have any communication issues or whatnot. And ever since that experience, I was hooked, all right? And today, this is my preferred tech stack. I work for a variety of clients. Some of those clients let me use this tech stack, some do not. But if I have a choice, this is the tech stack that I will go for. And of course, my screen decided to time out on me. There we go. And it doesn't look like it's displaying. Oh, there we go. All right. That QR code gets you to instructions for the workshop. Basically, we're going to start with that repository. We are going to have you fork that repository and establish what's called a GitHub code space using that repository. I don't have any religious affiliation for GitHub code spaces, but just as a practical matter, leading a workshop, I don't like local environment issues. Right, so it makes it easy for us to have a common way to run things. And what we're going to do is actually, let me back up. One of the things that Mr. Cockcroft turned me on to was the concept of planning implementations before you actually do them. And I started doing that with complex code bases, and the extent to which it investigated a code base and gave me a detailed plan was just godlike and awesome. All right, and so I started thinking, all right, if this stack can do more than just code, what else can I have it analyze? What else can I have it plan? And today, we use it to do architecture work. We use it to plan large projects. We use it to investigate code bases and let us know what the nasties are in the code base that we want to refactor, perhaps fix. Let us know what kind of test coverage we have, that kind of thing. And so what we're going to do today is a very similar kind of exercise. Basically, what I did is I pulled a code base off of GitHub. It's an open source CRM type code base. And we're going to analyze it and figure out where the nasties are in it. for modernizing it. Basically, app modernization means different things to different people, so let me park there for a second. By show of hands, who has heard of the 12-factor principles? Okay, a good, say 40%, good. For the rest of you, what those principles do, they were created circa 2012 by Heroku, which was bought out by Salesforce. And essentially what those principles do is if an application code base applies to those principles or implements those principles, then it's very easy to host that application wherever you might want to. It doesn't have any ties to specific operating systems or runtime environments. But moreover than that, it can dynamically scale, right? So typically when we get approached about app modernization projects, what they really mean is we want to move this thing to the cloud. What they really mean is we want to dynamically scale so that we don't have to basically buy hardware for our peaks. We want to be able to grow and shrink as we want to. And we want high availability features, right? If this thing needs to fail over from US East 1 to US West 1, we want to be able to do that. In other words, what really is underlying the need there is usually this app has gotten too hard to change and it's gotten too expensive and we need it to be better. So what we're going to do with this open source product is we're going to do a 12-factor analysis on it. We're going to see that it is a target-rich environment. All right, so there's lots of things in it that don't fit well with dynamic scaling. It'd be hard to basically keep it highly available, whether you deployed it to any of the clouds or to Cube. And basically, come on. So basically, we're gonna get the analysis back, and then we're gonna go through and we're gonna say, okay, let's plan an implementation. Let's say we wanted to go through and we wanted to fix all these things, all right? We're gonna have our Claude-Flow team go through and figure out what it needs to do, and you're gonna see that what it comes up with is fairly robust, but we will get there. And there are a couple of things that happen in that process. Oftentimes, when we plan a remediation or something along those lines, it does something that we don't want, and we go through and we have it replan with different specifics. No, I really want you to put an automated test harness in front of this, that kind of stuff, so I can change it safely. And then one of the things that comes up with app modernization when they see what kind of effort it's going to take, or when management sees that, usually somebody gets the idea of asking is, can we move these users to a different product, say a SaaS product or something along those lines. And it turns out that my Claude-Flow team can do product analysis fairly well too, all right? It's a little bit handicapped in this situation because in a real product analysis, you'll be able to tell somebody, we'll be able to tell the team that, okay, our users use these features, but they don't really use these features. By not giving it that kind of specifics, my team has to assume that they're using each and every feature, which kind of balloons the analysis a little bit, but we're going to see that a little bit. All right, so hopefully this has been up here enough. If you surf to the QR code associated with that, what you will get is a repository. Okay, and while that's not glamorous in and of itself, it contains a README which basically illustrates the steps that we're going to do. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fork it because we're going to instantiate a code space from it. Okay, so I'm going to fork it. I'm going to basically call it all right. One of the things that you will figure out is that Derek doesn't type and talk very well at the same time. I've tried for years, I just can't. So if there are a couple of strategic silences while I'm typing, that is just inherent in the system. And you only really need the main branch. I believe that's all there is at the moment, but at some point, very quickly, there it is. Now, after this happens, the first thing you want to do is up here in the left-hand column is you want to go to code spaces. And we are going to create a new code space. Select a repository. And I have access to all sorts of stuff. So I have to narrow down the list a little bit. Now, you can get away with using the default machine type of 2 cores. What happens is the code space will scream at you when Claude-Flow is working. It'll tell you that it's maxed and that basically it's underpowered. So it's not technically required, but I usually go with the 4-core option. All right, and I will stop slamming my hand against my chest because that's where the mic is. All right, so basically this is going. What I'm going to do is get back to our instructions to make sure that I don't forget anything. All right. Basically, it takes it a couple minutes to set up our code space. I realize that this is one of the exciting parts of the program, but it works. So basically, after this, I'm going to have you copy paste a couple of commands from the README in here that will install Claude-Flow, that will configure install Claude-Code, configure Claude-Code permissions, require that you log into Claude-Code. So you need to have a Claude-Code account if you're gonna proceed with the workshop. If you don't happen to have that set up, then you can look at the workshop as kind of like a demo or something, and you can go through it just like the rest of us, and you can go through it at a later time because I'm not taking that repository away. And then basically, after a couple of commands that we, setup commands that we issue, then we're going to start doing a 12-factor analysis over a open source product called idempower. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. But the code base for that is actually in this repository that you just forked. What you can do is, in real life, it's not uncommon for me to have a Git folder with 3 or 4 or 5 different projects in it with a single Claude-Flow installation. And depends on what kind of work I'm doing. But I wanted to make the setup as simple and easy for everybody as I could. Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna, just to fill the time. You mentioned some of your clients don't like this tech stack. Have they given you reasons why they don't like this tech stack, and how do you respond to those?
There is a complicated answer to that. Most of our clients are Fortune 1000 companies, and large organizations have large legal departments. And saying that Derek's going to come in and expose your code base and have it analyzed by Claude-Code, which has an Anthropic LLM at the other end of it, Claude Sonnet, typically, or whatever the version is now that they're using. That's easier said than done.
Yep.
All right? Yes, sir.
Do you know if Claude-Flow works with AWS Bedrock inference profiles?
It does. I've seen documentation to that effect. There are a couple of specifics when you configure Bedrock that you need to tell your Bedrock instance, you need to point it to Anthropic model, one of the couple that are sanctioned, and there are a couple of environment variables that you got to set.
Yeah, we've jumped through a bunch of hoops to get Claude-Code working. I'm wondering if without jumping through any more hoops, I could just take like the configuration.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it. So, yeah, it's the same as, if you have Claude-Code working Bedrock, Claude-Flow works the same.
All right, awesome. That's good to know.
So,
How's
yep.
the booting up going? Code spaces?
I'm still booting up.
Yeah. And incidentally, as a couple people have done, if you have questions or concerns or comments, this is for your benefit, right? Don't be shy, right? It doesn't do you any good to have Derek talk at you for an hour, unless you want that. But no, feel free to pipe up, and it is still going.
Git operations looks down.
I'm sorry, what's down?
Git operations, which is cloning. Like, failures across, like the server's down.
Oh, jeez.
I couldn't clone the repo either.
Yeah, I've been having random errors as well.
Oh, what error are you getting? I'm sorry.
The code space, for one, basically is running in recovery mode. The error is like past this window, but it was basically like it's running in recovery mode. Like certain things are just not installed, and so I'm trying to clone it and then manually to my machine, and I'm getting really bizarre errors I've never seen. Even though it's basically.
Oh, so you're cloning it locally and running it locally, correct?
I'm doing both.
You're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So GitHub Operations is down officially.
GitHub is at an average.
Yeah, so this morning was Cloudflare. So it's,
Okay. You know, it.
course of action is to clone it locally. Doesn't work either.
Cloning is down.
So what if we zip the repo and put it on? You can fork it. I forked it.
Yeah, I forked it.
For you it work? Okay.
Once you fork it, you can't get into a code space or a repo. Or you can't clone the repo.
Just type it in again. So when you should be able to download the repo as a zip. Try that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That works. Okay.
You can't clone the repo, or you can't fork the repo.
Unhealthy upstream. Neither. You can't clone it. And I don't know about forking it. I think I was able to fork it, but get the code space working. But yeah, I'm gonna see if I can.
It does look like the zip works. I mean, you got a zip file with code in it.
Any dangerous stuff in there besides the
No,
Okay.
there's
Miner?
there's no dangerous stuff in there.
Wallet ID?
No.
For those who can, probably you have a dev container in there, so if you want it, because it's running code spaces, so for those, probably you'd be able to run it in a dev container locally. But
Yeah, that's true too. I haven't tried that, and you don't really care about. All right.
So note to self, have a backup for all the services next year. Do that.
Hosted across all 3 clouds.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mine just came up.
Because I just went through this a few days ago.
Yeah, again, it's a global object on GitHub, so it's not what we can do. That's why it's.
Yeah.
Anybody got it, like locally?
I got it locally, but I don't know.
Okay. All right, so, okay.
All right. I am going to, even with the errors, what I'm going to do is install Claude-Code and see what issues it gives me. Okay, it did install it correctly. Let's see what, after you install Claude-Code, the next thing you need to do, and one of the reasons why I elected for code spaces is because I'm telling Claude to, in this installation, to dangerously skip permissions, because that is a real pain. When you do that, it basically wants me to log in. So I prefer dark mode, but you don't feel constrained to do that. I log into Claude account with my subscription. It gives me something in it. Well, it gives me an option to open it. I have never, I've had better luck with just copy pasting the URL. And I'm going to authorize my code space. And I get this occasionally. Sometimes Claude doesn't cooperate the first time. Sometimes I need to go through this 2 or 3 times, which I shouldn't have to, but is this the definition of insanity? Doing something repeatedly and expecting.
It's doing a callback to localhost, right? Is that correct? Is that port?
That's correct, but you normally see that. And normally what happens after about the 3rd or 4th time,
Because you're on a foreign network here, so it should be localhost the same. Yeah.
all right, and we are not behind a proxy and a firewall, right? This is
I
just,
can't tell you, but I assume not.
yeah.
Do you want to do the direct line and see if that
Sure. Okay, this guy? Okay. So in other words, what we're saying is we're no longer going to use Wi-Fi. We are, okay. All right, so that's,
Turn the Wi-Fi
turn the Wi-Fi off. My apologies, we shouldn't be running into this trouble.
Should you try to get a new token or something, just in case?
I'm sorry?
Should you try to get a new token or a link from CLI?
Sure, we can. Cancel. Let's go ahead and try this from the beginning. Dark mode, Cloud account with a subscription. Completely new tab. I'm sorry?
Do you want to try the Wi-Fi again?
I don't think, so localhost is trying to connect locally, so that should work, right, without any Wi-Fi. Because the internet is connecting. You get a reply back on the local host.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't seem to be able to open your port locally. Are you
Okay.
running it in a dev container? No, this is,
No, I'm running it in the browser.
okay. Oh, but your local host is, is that port forwarded in your dev container?
No, it.
Okay, sorry.
I have seen that error before, and what I've done is I've been able to do that.
So if you take that port 37335 and you in your code spaces you add this as a port forwarding. I have to think where that is again.
But the thing is, at that point, it's not in the code spaces.
But your code spaces need to forward your localhost port, which is the port mapping, and then your localhost URL will direct it to the code space. So usually on this thing here or something, it says like you need, let's see what that is, forwarded ports, right? Okay, so you see it's 33, that's the same port?
It is the same port.
Okay, so it is forwarding. Okay, it says okay, so it isn't that, so your port is forwarding. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, if you resolve in your Windows machine, right? If you resolve localhost, where does it land? Should be local, but you're using an external DNS, so I'm just not sure what localhost is.
Well, I'm using whatever DNS comes along with.
Sure. Could you open up let's say a CLI, a command prompt or something, a DOS box? See what localhost is, like ping localhost and see what.
Okay.
A lot of them just went to the Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi wasn't
The hard was weird.
Yeah, but GitHub in general is having issues, so that's something we can't do about.
That's not us.
So what
Okay.
does it say? Ping localhost, okay, so it's giving the laptop.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of options. All right. This isn't working for me today, which I apologize for that. I have done it. What I can do is walk you through the commands that I issued. The specifications I gave my team and the results that we got back, if that would be helpful. So basically, what would happen is after we got Claude-Flow properly installed and configured, or Claude-Code properly installed and configured, we would execute Claude-Flow. Basically, that probably won't work because essentially there's no NPX is not found.
You can use my machine.
Okay,
If I can get it working. Yeah, I get through, like, we both got through, like, the Claude-Flow course stuff.
got it.
So just doing that before we started, so.
Okay. All right. But after that, what we would have done is, let me explode this a little bit. Basically, we would give it the following instructions, all right? And basically, this bullet list I've formatted as a big, long command string because Claude-Flow is a command line tool, kind of like Claude-Code is. There is a primitive GUI associated with it. But anyway, all I'm doing is I'm asking it to perform a 12-factor analysis on this application, and I'm telling it where the application source code is. It's in the code space. And I told it to put the results in folder 12-factor. I told it where the 12-factor principles are documented in case it didn't know. All right, no magic there. I didn't assume that it would know. I told it that I want to know where this application falls short of 12-factor principles so that I can assess its capability for public cloud dynamic scaling and availability features should it be deployed there. All right, so I'm being honest about what I want and why I want it. I told it not to change the application yet. I told it that I'm only interested in the 12-factor analysis. Don't do anything more. And please let me know if you need additional information. So I give it an option to come back to me and say, hey, Derek, if you gave me this information, my analysis would be better. And what it came up with it did exactly what I wanted. And I'm going to pull up, and it's a very detailed analysis, and I'm going to pull up what the summary is. You can, I will make sure that this link is posted after the talk so you can see everything, but it basically gave me a 12-factor compliance grade for the application, and it went through each of the 12 factors and told me which factor the application was compliant in and which factor it wasn't. And this is the summary section, right? So if we went down below, it'll tell me exactly what the details are for why it's non-compliant and what was non-compliant about it and what it thinks it'd have to change to make it compliant. And about this point, I usually get a question about, well, great, this report that comes out is very verbose and it's very detailed, but can you trust it? All right. And the way I would cast that conversation is what we're choosing is I can give this work for a 12-factor analysis, an audit of an existing source code base. I can give that to an automated team like my Claude-Code team, or I can give that to a human team. In either case, with what I get back, I trust but verify. All right? So I don't take anything verbatim. And so what I would do is go through in detail what it considers blockers, what it considers ready, and I would basically go validate that as an architect. Now we can see that one of the reasons that it failed is because some of the security requirements for some of these security standards aren't met. And it very well might be that in my particular installation, I might be in an enterprise that doesn't have to be concerned about these particular security standards. And I didn't, as you recall the instructions that I gave it, I didn't tell it what security standards we had to apply and what we could not have to deal with, all right? And so it's basically making an assumption, all right? Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you're doing here. I really like the approach that you have in kind of specifying exactly what the kind of the tasks, what the team is expected to do, right? Like, why are you putting this in the space of using Claude-Flow over using any other coding system? Like, why do you think Claude-Flow is good at this versus using some other system?
Okay, that's a very good question. The question is why Claude-Flow versus some other tooling?
Yeah.
All right. What happens under the covers with Claude-Flow is there's a coordinator that looks at the request that I give it, and it decides what kind of team it needs underneath with what kind of stills, right? Whether it needs more researchers or whether it needs more analysts or whether it needs more coders or whether it needs testers, that kind of thing. And in this case, for this kind of analysis, it probably wouldn't allocate a tester at all, right? You probably...
And those roles are drawn from a roster that exists within the Claude-Flow project
Correct.
itself? You're not modifying specifications. The schema for those roles?
That's correct.
You create your own custom role within Claude-Flow.
Yeah. You are talking to somebody that doesn't go for complexity unless I have a business need to do it. All right. Claude-Flow out of the box has 16 different agent roles that it can apply to a specific problem. It has right around, at last count, 70 different MCP toolings that come pre-configured right out of the box that I don't have to configure. I can configure additional ones if I want to, right? But unless I have a business need to do that, I don't, all right? One of the reasons I love about this, one of the things I love about this tech stack is, and we didn't see it today, but usually it just works, all right? And I don't have to pre-configure it. You can create teams of agents with other tech stacks, but what you get stuck with is micromanaging that team. All right. Cursor just basically released an ability where you could run multiple agents to do multiple things within the IDE, but it's still incumbent upon me as a user to figure out, okay, this agent is going to do that task, this agent is going to do that task, this agent is going to do that task. And I, by nature, I'm not a micromanager, right? If I don't have to micromanage, I would rather not. I would rather deal with what outcomes I want and what the specifics are for those outcomes and validating that I got what I asked for. That's what I want to concentrate on. And that's why I use this tech stack. All right. Did that answer your question?
No, 100%. I want to start a discussion more than anything.
So yeah, that's basically what I did. And I basically offline went through Each of these failures, it apparently requires sticky sessions, which means you can scale up, but you can't scale down. Things along those lines make it hard to like dynamically scale, and it also makes it hard to automatically fail over. There are a variety of ways to solve that problem, right? You can put the state in the client. You can adopt some sort of memory cache like Redis or something along those lines to manage the state. But essentially, you know, there are ways to solve that problem, but they're not currently solved. So we would have to do that if we wanted to dynamically scale. And I basically went through each and every one of these things, items, and basically for the large part of it, I kind of agreed with what it came up with. There were some items that I might have graded as not critical, but high or something along those lines. But to me, that's a nit. Okay? Now, after doing that and having it, if I needed to plan it, I could. The next thing I did is I basically said, okay, use the 12-factor analysis you documented in this folder. I told it again where the principles are, just so that it didn't forget. I wanted it to document an implementation plan to upgrade this application so that it meets all the 12-factor principles. And place that implementation plan in folder 12-factor plans. Assume the implementation will be performed by agentic engineers using Claude-Flow and Claude-Code. Claude-Code is very quaint. If you don't tell it that, what it'll do is assume that you're giving it to a human team. And the reality is, I'm not. All right? So basically, I told it not to change the application yet, but let me know if it needed anything. And basically, I got a plan, and then I enhanced it. All right, and I will show you what I did.
Hey, in your experience, how long does it usually take for it to run? I've been running like 20 minutes.
I'm sorry?
Mine runs 10
Didn't finish in 10 minutes. Okay.
The thing with Claude-Flow is really variable though. Like I've noticed that. Like I've used it for a number of projects and stuff. Like if you ask it to do the same thing twice, like 20 minutes versus 10, it does the same thing. Like that's why I'm kind of asking you a question about like why Claude-Flow, because like it's, I know you can dig in and say, hey, these are the types of agents it's going to be employing, but like you start to compound variance. Like when you're enlisting a team of like 6 different roles, the variability in which those roles are conducted and then how those roles then collaborate, you're compounding. Like
Yes.
variability, so your spread is huge in terms of like how you execute a task. Like that's, I appreciate the power of all the agent systems, but like how to operationalize them and say, hey, I want it to in 10 minutes instead of 20 is tough.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of
You don't get to pick that.
you don't get to pick that, right?
Right.
That's the
No,
same with
but like,
developer team.
but I kind of need it because my project has to be done by Friday.
Do it to
right?
do that, you'll be fine.
Like it's
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see what people's experiences are.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
No, you are absolutely right.
Bottlenecks are between the agents, between all the things that you're passing either, right? Like,
no, you
you
don't.
pass a whole bunch of things into Claude-Flow, you don't know where there's a bottleneck somewhere. We
No,
just
but
don't
I
know
think
where it
from
is.
like even just from the other sessions that we've had today, right? Like which is
Right.
like how can you have more controllability? How can you be a bit more? You want to get to a place where you have like the minimum viable prompt in order to accomplish a task, right? Like minimizing your context as much as possible. I think when you have like frameworks like this, if you marry
Yeah.
those two things together, you get to a place where you can really lower that variability.
I
think you need visibility before,
100%.
before that.
100%.
You need to,
Right.
I feel like we're flying blind a little bit with this.
Okay,
We're letting it go. It's not
Right.
you. It's, we let it go, and we're just like, it keeps going. Like Claude started adding stuff like the usage command, things like that. It'd be really good, and it's the
Yeah.
immaturity of the environment to have the sub-agents know, kind of know where you are. If you launch 10 sub-agents,
yeah.
you don't just want to come back in like 3 hours. You want to know like
Yeah.
how far
Yeah.
are each of them done? Like what are they doing?
Well, I mean, hang on for a second. Part of this is what you apply Claude-Flow for,
Yeah.
right? I'm basically, it uses LLM at the back end, right? Which means it's non-deterministic. Had this workshop worked as planned and we were all running 12-factor analysis, I can guarantee you that the reports for each one of us would have been slightly different. It may have caught some of the same things, but the format would have been different or whatnot. And in my mind, that's okay. That's a nit, because at this level, we're not putting that analysis into production.
I think it's fine that it's not deterministic, but not knowing where you are, whether you're 5% done or
Yeah, you want to measure variance.
like you don't know how far done you are. That's not your
What
problem.
you can
Right.
do, so if you would build a role, which is actually a report out agent, that actually similar to a backlog ND, here's the task that I completed, this is where I
An
got.
OTEL test.
And kind of marry the two a little bit, so you have like interview visibility. And some like other tools allow you to, and it's actually one of the challenges, while agents are running a long time, you want to
Yeah.
sometimes nudge them in the middle and say, no,
Yeah.
stop here, go that.
Well,
Given that it's Claude, then you should be able to use all the hooks.
Correct.
Right? Like, you should be able to then get to that tree
Yeah.
based on that.
But
No.
you also just can't really one-shot long-form tasks, right? Like Adobe's, what was it, NOLA benchmark basically showed that performance over long-form tasks basically like eventually degrade, and it inherently makes sense, right? You have an LLM, it's probabilistic. Let's say 5% of the time it's going to hallucinate something. You compound a bunch of tasks all over there. Anything that you do for a longer period of time in that probabilistic scenario magnifies the error rate, right? So if you don't steer like in certain phases, then you end up basically completely derailing, and then you just end up having the total garbage. Or like, even worse, super subtle bugs in logic that you don't notice until you ship the prod, which we like see
Right.
in our usage.
Right. I mean, your points are well taken. A couple of work habits that I've adopted in this world that may be of use is I don't send my Claude-Flow team off to do something that I know is going to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever that time frame is. I'll start it and then I'll go do something else. I'll come back to it in a half hour or whatnot. And I've just gotten used to working that way. The other thing that's critical in this world, whether you're using Claude-Flow or whether you're using Cursor or Windsurf or whatever AI coding agent that you're using, basically source control discipline is critical. You've always got to be able to get back to a known good. So I feature branch everything, right? And I limit what work is in that feature branch, and after I've validated it, it goes into the trunk, right? Basically, before this world, I used to, like a year and a half ago, I used to rarely throw away feature branches, right? Now I throw away a good 30% of them. It's just part of the process, right? I don't look at that as a bad thing. That's something that Derek has to do differently, and that's okay. This old dog does occasionally learn new tricks. So,
Has anybody heard of JJ as an alternative to Git, which is like a very lightweight of doing feature branches and like local, kind of like commits, and then you can define what is the actual commit. So it's like a local
It's like
committing.
pre for like instead of not squashing it,
Yeah, it's like you can pick or whatever, but it's a very lightweight. So I see some people using this as the local snapshotting that, like
Yeah.
doing with the feature process. Yeah, so I can use JJ for this system and
Use
then I
Git for
use
your
Git
team,
for you're
JJ.
actually pushing it out.
Yeah.
Clear.
So there are some habits that, in my mind, you need to, are best kind of learned. So, but you're right.
Is there any additional tooling that you actually build on top of Claude-Flow? Because Claude-Flow, just from a cursory scan of the code base, has a ton of stuff, right? So that basically
Oh, it is.
if a lot of these things are basically being automatically activated, how do you tune it? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you
Time out. I'll segue back to a statement I made earlier. You're talking to somebody that doesn't accept additional complexity unless I actually have a business need to do it. So if I have in my back pocket, there are backdoor tunables to Claude-Flow should the need arise, right? But to date, I've been using this scene for about 6 months, which is an eternity in this business, right? That's about
10 years.
Yeah, about 10 years these days. I have not had a need to have to do that. At one point in time, if you look at the Claude-Flow documentation, they want you to use the alpha label by default. For a while, I was using native because I'm using it to actually do work, right? For a while there, up front and early, alpha was just too alpha for me. I ran into too many runtime problems. But other than that, I haven't had to tune anything. And like I said, it's not that the world's been perfect, but more often than not, the errors I run into are my errors. It went off into never, never land because I gave it a vague instruction. And so when I realize that, I basically go back to the known good, I fix my instruction, and I redo it, right? I don't try to fix something that got polluted down the road because that's hard. And somebody mentioned introducing bugs that you don't notice. I religiously pay attention to my code coverage stats, right? Because you're right. If you tell it that you want all tests passing, there's a temptation for it to jimmy the tests so that it's passing, even though it's not really testing anything. So I pretty much insist on looking at code coverage, is it in the preferably 75 to 85 percentile range, somewhere around in there, is what I've arbitrarily settled on. Some people will go higher, some people will go lower. That's a subjective call on my part. What ends up happening is you can decree that, okay, I want you to do 100% coverage, but then what happens is your test code balloons because now it's got to mock everything over God's green earth. So, you get additional complexity that you don't necessarily want. So, I would look at cases where something shipped and I didn't notice. I would basically go beef up my test cases so that, whatever ended up shipping doesn't happen again. So, and I've seen some material, some people get gonzo about protecting their tests. I've seen some people will physically separate their test code from their implementation code, and they'll make their test codes more acceptance test level rather than unit test level. And they'll remove it for a separate repo so that whatever agents are manipulating your code can't make it easier on themselves by omitting the tests.
Yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily to do with them not generating a test. A lot of times they'll generate the tests that are either totally bullshit or will generate very subtle changes to the tests that might be hard to catch in like features.
Yeah.
So you'll end up, it'll be in that like rough 80% range, but you'll just not have, the tests actually won't be there. And you could argue that, yeah, just code review better. But a lot of times when you have pretty big PRs and you're constantly reviewing PRs, both yours and others, eventually you'll have like regressions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, manual CRs, what ends up happening there, like you said, the volume of them gets to you after a while, so people rubber stamp them. What I've seen some people do is have one agentic AI grade do the pull request for the output of another, right? So for instance, the GitHub Copilot agent, right? If you subscribe to that service, it can like do PRs for every pull request that you do. And in my case, if I've got Claude-Code and Claude-Flow generating and changing my code, right? Copilot basically doing a PR request on it. You've got one agent grading another, but you still run into the issue you talk about where it looks like spam at some point because there are just too many things happening at this point. I guess what I come back to is I care more about what I try to test at an acceptance test level, in other words, closer to what the user actually does, and I want to make sure that those work. Unit tests are a little bit too closely bound to the code itself for my tastes. So I more concentrate on that. But like, there's no perfect answer to that question. No matter what puts the code there or the code changes there, sooner or later, defects will get out the door. But I look at that at a higher level. I measure DORA stats and that kind of stuff pretty closely. If my defect rate goes up, then it's a pretty much a indicator that there's something wrong systemically I need to deal with. If my defect rates and my throughput rates and my velocity are my DORA stats, all 4 of them or 5 of them, whatever they are now, are in aggregate looking good, then yes, I'm still going to get the occasional defect that goes out the door, but it's a question of odds, right? Nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? So I'll get off my soapbox. Yes, sir.
Quick question. So this is a pretty passive process here and low risk, right? We're just generating reports.
Yes.
Do you have use cases in which you use this to actually change code, add new features? Like tell me about maybe a couple of use cases.
I personally do not use it to actively change, commit, and deploy code to environments. I insist on a human in the loop, all right? I'm completely comfortable with an agent going through and saying, okay, you're getting this error, I'm going to propose this fix. Here's a PR. I'm completely cool with that, right? But I want a human in the loop there somewhere. I've just seen too many horror stories. Now, maybe we might get there someday, and I would feel more comfortable with that. But right now, I don't.
You've had Claude-Flow agents, like swarm of agents that write code, but in the rules, you're essentially saying, you can create all these new features, but I want a human in the loop, I want you to create a PR, whatever, something like that.
Right. And in fact, Git, I pretty much declare as that's human oversight. All right, so I basically say, okay, Claude-Flow and Claude-Code, here's your feature branch. I want this behavior coming out of it, make these changes, but I don't trust it with the power to go ahead and merge that feature branch to main. Right, I want to see the code coverage at the end of it. I want to, if there's any part of it that looks fishy or whatnot, you know, occasionally, not that I like manual testing at all, but some people need that, or some things need that. And somebody's calling me, and they can go away. So you had a question.
Just an observation. Throughout the whole talk, you've been talking about your dev team as if the agentic agents
Yeah.
were your team. To me, that's a huge mind shift. That's only happened in the last year. So previously, I ran a dev team of 20 folks.
6 months. Happened within the last 6 months.
And having used these same tools, I also referred to Claude as my dev team, but I thought I was a weirdo.
Welcome to the club.
We all might be weirdos.
That's just speaking for myself, but
Me,
that's huge.
me to fellow weirdo.
And as someone who was responsible for hiring, recruiting, training, you know, I looked at my dev team, a typical team of 6, front end, back end, DevOps. That was $1 million a year domestically, right? Each of those wonderful people getting, you know, good salary, overhead benefits, blah, blah, blah. I complain now when I spend $100 a day on that same group of people, quote unquote, agents doing this code, right? So that economic shift, even if it's got bugs, you know what? My people did, and they called in sick. I'll take a few relative rate of bugs in the door metrics for someone who never calls in sick and is always polite.
Yeah.
And costs me fractions, you know, pennies on the dollar, what I would pay out the door for these again, really
Yeah.
talented, lovely folk that I enjoy working with every day.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that Derek's going anywhere anytime soon because of Claude-Flow and Claude-Code, or I don't believe Frank's going anywhere.
I
Any,
don't know about Frank Jr.
any,
The next folks come out of school at the age of 20, you know, how are they gonna get the experience? I know what that looks like.
I don't think it's about the age or the number of experience, it's the relative ability. Because I think you can find people that are juniors and or seniors. I don't want to be
Yeah.
ageist or reverse ageist where I've seen people that are juniors that pick this stuff up really quick.
Sure.
I've also seen people that are seniors that kind of clock in and get attendance to be here. So it's not, I don't think it's about junior versus
Very fair
senior.
point.
It's
Yeah.
more about engineering, a higher order of engineering capabilities required
Right.
for this.
the phrase I use for that is there's a difference between 20 years of experience and 1 year experience 20 times.
Well, there's people like that for sure.
But knowing
Yeah.
what good looks like. So I get this argument quite often, like, okay, the younger generation, how are they going to learn? But when you talk to the younger generation, they say, we can learn so much faster because it's kind of constantly helping us to level up. Of course, you need to have that skill and so on, but they have like this continuous sparring partner that
Yeah.
required us like years of scar tissue.
Yeah.
So there's a balance in both, but the ability to adapt and to learn and to suck it up,
Yeah.
that's definitely.
I like what you're saying, but I don't know that it's,
Fair enough.
junior versus senior.
I
I
had in
think
my
it's more-
mind just my former team.
yeah,
And
that's
the point of
fair.
pride is I had, you know, 5 decades. I had somebody in their 20s and somebody in their 70s all contributing. And I always worried about how do I continue to advance my new hires in their career trajectory for the next decade.
And this whole world is so new, we don't have a definitive playbook for how we grow seniors. When that question comes up, things that I try is kind of what I do with juniors today. I visit them twice a day. I look in on how they're doing, and the questions are different. It's like don't show me what code you've done. You know, what have you instructed your Claude-Flow team to do? And how's it working? You know, are they spinning? Or, you know, what's constructively been improved on, and what are you having trouble with? And if they're having trouble with something, I may pair with them and have them show me their instructions, right? And then more often than not, I can help coach them about how to make those instructions better. Because to my way of thinking, it's not that the work's going away, it's that the skill set and the talents that are needed are different, and they're changing. And basically what I tell people is that, you know, this world is coming. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but denial's not a great strategy. Don't do it. Yes?
Hey, just to comment on that scenario, I think for younger engineers, the desired skill sets was different. And the best young engineers are going to be those who understand how to use tools like this, and have good ideas. Because like you said, like your scenario where you get rid of 6 people and you can get the same work done. Yeah, you're saving $1 million a year to do the same amount of work. I think on the other end, there are going to be companies that say, let's hire 4 guys that can each do what you're doing with those agents and invest $1 million to 4x revenue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can have that, more work equals more revenue, that's a great strategy.
Yeah, but it's not true. It's not
Yeah,
true.
some of our stuff which is boundary condition where it's just cost.
So in DevOps, we automated a lot of stuff, and a lot of people said, oh, you know, just gonna automate, and I don't need to understand all the stuff. If you look at the whole progression, yes, we had tests, because first we had like automation, then we had tests. Okay, and we're talking about testing, being able to do that well. We got like observability came up, like I want to see what's happening, I want to understand, I want to dig in. Okay, similar thing. And then in the end, we had like chaos engineering, and chaos engineering was actually to be prepared when things fail. So as the tools are progressing and getting better, somebody stepping in at the moment of need, and kind of situational awareness, saying yes, no to even the agent.
Yeah.
That is like a fireman preparing for that. And you know, you can prepare and learn, but a lot of companies might not say, we're going to keep teaching you just in case. They might skip that like investment. But when you're going to need it, you're going to call and get the notes.
I think you have to keep teaching yourself as an individual.
Yeah.
But one thing to point about the DevOps resolution is I feel that in most cases made us go faster, not have less cost.
Yeah.
Everything just started going faster.
And everything
This
is
will probably be the same. Most people won't use this or won't be able to reduce costs with this. Most people.
Yeah.
They'll be able to go faster if they're good.
Yeah.
But I don't think many people are able to reduce costs.
a lot of the craft, when they become craft, oh, it's going to be automated. They say, well, now everybody can do this, right? In essence, what happens, the craft becomes for a while kind of commodity, and then the people doing this, they become specialized, right? Because they take on bigger chunks, more complex stuff, like, you know, one person dealing with 10 AI agents. And that's a common pattern of something that gets more common, but then eventually it becomes like a higher level of education.
That's right. I mean, I don't think coding's actually going away, but what I think is that what a colleague termed as commodity coders, coders where you say, all right, I need a class that does this, that, and the other thing, and you go code it and return it, and you're done, and you don't care about where that class is used and what function it actually serves and what you're building. Those commodity coders basically are likely to go away. But that doesn't mean the work goes away. That means it shifts.
I think that's coding versus engineering.
Yes.
It's like the code, typing the code in will go away. You don't have to you're married to type it.
Yes.
We keep saying you
Understanding it is different.
You need professional critical thinkers.
Yes.
But it's the
Well,
same thing.
I'm-
My wife, she's a photographer, and I can take pretty pictures with my iPhone, but I can't build up, like, whatever. I can't. She'll take a better picture, even without any of my, you know, kind of fun stuff. And it's the same thing, you'll have people who aren't just good at that. So.
Yeah. And in fact, I see similar rookie mistakes. The first thing that coders who try to get into this world try to do is they try to micromanage it. I want it to produce code exactly like I would have produced it. All right? And that's the wrong way to think about it. They need to evolve to think about, okay, these are the outcomes I want. I mean, I could take the same development task and give it to person A or person B or person C, and I'm not going to get exactly what it would have been if I had coded it, right? That's just not a realistic thing. What's realistic is to expect that it does what it's supposed to do when you're concentrating on the outcomes. And that's the biggest mistake that I see. The other confusion I see is there's a wide variance depending upon what tooling you're using. All right. One of my clients took about 18 months, just over, to clear GitHub Copilot within Visual Studio Code with the legacy ChatGPT 4 models, right? And at one point in time, that was state of the art 18 months ago. I get that. But now it's in the rearview mirror and it's getting smaller every day, right? And I talked to somebody who is compelled to use that because of where they work, and they don't have the same kind of good experience that I have with Claude-Code and Claude-Flow. And that's just going to be part of our world. I used to pride myself on being at the forefront and being able to stay at the forefront of everything. And I've gotten used to the fact that I am just barely keeping up.
We've been talking for 2 hours, I'm sure things came out today. We missed something.
Yeah, Gemini 3, and anti-gravity. New IDE, new model.
Yeah.
Point taken.
So,
I wonder when you say, well, don't look at the code and kind of work on the outcomes. The flip side that I have in my head is when it fails, you need to kind of somehow dig in and kind of help it, right? So it's a little bit of like.
that's a very good point. I see another rookie, what I consider a rookie mistake, and maybe that's a harsh assessment, is somebody concentrating on outcomes, getting an error, and then immediately getting out their debugger and looking at a code level. All right? And there's a step or two in between there. All right? So one of the things that I do is basically when it's obvious that I've given the same type of error back to my team and it's not getting fixed, I'll start asking my team detailed questions. All right? And oftentimes in that conversation, between the team and I, we'll figure out what the issue is, and I never got to the code level to begin with. And I'll give you a concrete example. One of my Golang projects was bombing in its build step, the linter that goes through and makes sure that Golang is structured correctly or whatnot. Golang has a linter for that purpose, and it just wasn't passing after 2 or 3 times giving it to my Claude-Flow team. Basically, they weren't getting any closer. And then in that conversation with my team, basically we figured out that in the build workflow, I had a linter that was about 6 or 7 months old. And my Claude-Flow team was doing backflips because what it had access to was a lot more current than that. And so I basically instructed my team that, no, go upgrade the workflow, the build workflow, so that it uses a more current version of the linter, and we were fine. We stopped spinning, right? But in that case, I didn't get down to code level. right? I mean, I got stack trace errors, and anybody who prides themselves on being able to get to a code level error and debug a stack trace or whatnot hops at it because it's a world that they're comfortable with. What I'm trying to impress upon you is that there are a couple steps you go through before you get to that step. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's all, very resonant with a bunch of experiences. So,
Yeah, and oftentimes that is kind of congruent with comparing it to like a junior or a human team. You wouldn't necessarily, as a good manager, go micromanage somebody under you being a human. I wouldn't want to jump to that as the first level in this world either. Now, maybe maybe I'll get riots in the streets over that statement, but
everybody's mileage will vary.
but no, I mean I use this stack day in, day out, and somebody could come out with something better next week, and the truth is I have no allegiance to this. If somebody shows me something better and I play around with it and I agree that it is better, I'm sorry, Ruben, who creates Claude-Flow, but no, I'm moving on.
I don't know if this has been addressed, but have you seen like huge token usage from Flow? Like how bad am I going to spend my company's API?
That is a very good question. I had to bump my subscription to the max subscription for $100 a month.
Yeah. Luckily, that's not too bad.
Right. Well, no, I mean, it's not cheap. I hesitated doing it, but I pretty much figured out that, all right, another Derek philosophy is we're all responsible for our own skill sets, right? And if I don't have an employer that's going to fund that $100 a month, and I perceive that I really need to learn how to get into this business, I'm going to do it, at least for a while.
I have one more follow-up question for you. Have you gone into depth in terms of customizing Claude-Flow for specific like, development areas? Like I'm a Salesforce architect, so my focus is in Salesforce stuff, but I'm wondering if there's been a lot of...
I have not had a need to. I have seen the material about how I could go do that and micromanage what types of agents it spins up in the team that it uses, how I could configure my own agents with their own roles if, you know, I had a specific need and none of the 16 that comes with Claude-Flow really matches what I want to do. I realize that I can go do that. But you're talking to somebody that doesn't do the complexity just because it's the shiny object in the corner, right? That's not me. If I have a specific need, I need to go do that. I know I can, and I'll go figure it out. But I haven't had the need to do that.
I wonder what you think about, so I've been building my own like sub-agent swarms myself, just with specific Salesforce MCPs and stuff that I think would be helpful for Salesforce projects. But it feels like Claude-Flow is just like a super polished version of that with more tooling that's available for kind of any size fits all projects.
Yeah, I have no doubt that when you put your own custom team together, you are probably getting less token usage. You are probably having an incremental improvement over what the generic Claude-Flow would do. Then it's a cost-benefit thing, right? Is the additional work worth 10 or 20% better? In some cases, it might. In some cases, no, you go with the general and you do your specific tuning on the cases where you need to.
There's also the benefit of learning how to orchestrate agents, which is fun.
Well, no, and I understand that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do things for fun. I get that.
It looks like it's mostly one guy, 2,900 commits.
Yeah.
Just one guy? No. The next is Claude. Claude is the next with 180. The third highest committer in Claude-Flow, 7 commits.
Wow.
It
I'm
is,
not saying he's not good, but it's one guy.
That's crazy.
well, not only that, but he eats his own dog food.
Oh, no.
No,
I'm just,
yeah. Rough, kind of the other, it's been going on for a long time, it was at Accenture and really he's leading the space. So, of course, he's like one of the core committers because he's leading a lot of people.
That's fair.
There's a whole community around that, which is the agentic engineering group, and they're helping him, but obviously he's like pushing and
He's a little bit
pushing.
ahead of them.
But he's not alone in that perspective. He has like a community around that is helping him. But he's always pushing, so that's why he's kind of going down there. He is working a lot on the token usage, like recently also with new MCP features. He was able to drop like kind of the whole tokens, so he's aware. He's also has to pay his bills, right? So that's
Yeah.
happening there. I have one question for you.
Sure.
In a way, like it was briefly mentioned, like let's say I have specific knowledge, right? Salesforce, big Rhino knowledge, something I've got out of the years. How do you provide that to a Claude-Flow, right? Because the 12-factor is wildly known, but like you probably have specifics.
Well, I mean, in terms of specifying what you want Claude-Flow to do, if you can verbalize what that knowledge is and can tell the Claude-Flow team about it, it can work with it.
So you provided like prompts with like your knowledge or specifics, or you don't?
Right. For example, we planned a rather large implementation for a large financial institution. And I can't name the financial institution because we technically weren't supposed to do that planning with Claude-Flow outside of their environment. But basically it came out with a plan, and right away we saw that, okay, in this environment, these things aren't actually technical problems. They're requests to be filed with different teams, all right? In this environment, at this stage, we have to go to the governance board for approval for this, that, or the other thing. My team didn't know anything about that, all right? So with that specialized knowledge, we documented that in a markdown and told Claude-Flow about it and told it to reassess its plan. And it did that. But what it came down to is me identifying what that knowledge was and me having the English skills to be able to put it in markdown that I could hand to Claude-Flow. Along those lines, another technique that I use sometimes is I ask my team to explain its thinking step by step. And the reason I do that is because oftentimes when it makes assumptions, if you don't tell it to show its work step by step, sometimes those assumptions kind of get buried. Whereas if you tell it to show its thinking step by step, you can see those assumptions oftentimes being made. And I can say, oh, I see why it made those assumptions. I didn't tell it anything differently. That's not their fault. That's my fault. And I will go clarify those instructions so that they don't have to make those assumptions and go redo whatever it was. Yes, ma'am?
When you ask it to explain these step-by-step instructions, is it consistently giving you the same assumptions, or do the assumptions change over time?
Okay, the question as I understand it, and I'm repeating it so people in the front of the room can hear it, is that do you let the team make assumptions or?
When you ask it to explain it step-by-step,
Yes.
do you find that it gives you consistent answers for the assumptions that it's making, or do you find that it changes over time?
That's a good question. I believe that if I gave it the same thing and told it to reflect its thinking step by step, since LLMs aren't Deterministic, they would be subtle differences between those executions, but more likely than not, it will tell me explicitly what it's assuming and why it's thinking what it's thinking. And that's the information that I want, all right? And I'm not trying to get people to say that we never let the team make assumptions, because they may make 100 assumptions and 80% of them might be fine, right? You might only have issues with 20% of them or 10% of them or something along those lines. I guess I wouldn't make the mistake of being unnecessarily specific until I had a need. And when I ask for step-by-step documentation and I'm reading through what it thought and how it went through this, I might see a need to say, okay, I don't want it making an assumption about this. And so out of that long litany of assumptions it made, I might take the effort to say, okay, I'm going to give you decisions on 2 of them. And sometimes, that statement at the end of those instructions, I usually put where I ask it to let me know if it needs anything. Sometimes I'll get in the markdown, usually buried at the bottom. It'll have a series of questions and basically say, okay, you need to make a decision about these 5 things. And I'll usually listen, and I'll usually make a decision about those things and have it replan. All right. I generally, I've gotten conditioned to look for those paragraphs. But that's just me. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a different question going back to the earlier conversation around, automation to testing to observability to now chaos engineering, kind of this spectrum. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on where does governance play a role in that? Is it because we don't have governance defined up front and we're doing a lot of this experimentative progression that then there's this chaos engineering?
The question is, where does governance play a role in this? In the front or the end? For me personally, since I don't let my team merge branches into trunk or whatnot, the governance is really a human looking over that pull request. And what I do personally, in addition to looking over that pull request, I may not look over the code changes line by line, but I pay a lot of attention to my code coverage and what changes you made to the tests. I want to make sure that you're not just neutering the tests just to get past my 80% threshold request, right? So that is different than the governance that you would normally do with a human team. You look at the changes line by line. That's pretty common. I tend not to do that. I look at the outcomes, and I look at the tests for the outcomes, and I look at the defect rates.
I think I see people do it at different places. So, if your security has some kind of guidance, or your DevOps team has some kind of standards or architecture, people put that into their kind of prompts because it kind of yields already things in the right direction. But the actual kind of governance, it probably should be more non-deterministic. So you put it there, then the reviewing can give you feedback. You have to make a decision, and hopefully there's more enforcement point happening as well. So if you don't do it here, you're gonna have to go back into the loop. But it's like Derek says, it's a balance. If you do it too strict, nothing will it will grind to a halt here. But having some notions, the broad strokes, it already puts it in the right direction.
That's true. So I guess I would paraphrase it and say that the governance changes in this world, but it's still there. That's how I would phrase it.
That makes sense, though. I guess I'm curious, you mentioned
the reason I'm shifting my focus and no longer looking at changes line by line is that there are too many lines changed, right? I look at it as a continuum, right? Let's say a completely human, non-agentic AI kind of team like we used to have 2 or 4 or 5 years ago, whatnot, all right? You give them a story to work on, you give them a change to work on, and it's generally framed so that they could make that change within a couple days, right? If it's longer than that, it's generally too large of a story, all right? So you take that definition in today's world, and on the other end of the continuum is a one-shot deal where, build me an application from scratch that does everything, and including, buttered my toast and whatnot. There's a continuum in between there. And what I would think, or what I think, is that with this world, that optimal story size moves a little bit this direction. It's not at the other end of the continuum, but it moves a little bit this direction. And when that happens, those commits get larger, right? And if I'm looking at 40 lines being changed that takes me X amount of time, I'm confronted with the PR from this world that might have thousands of lines of change. And I'm not going through that line by line. I just don't have the time or the bandwidth.
Some people have been experimenting with, so you can find code in app, right? So that's one way, you give it all the instructions to this. I saw somebody who did actually, after it was coded, he asked Claude-Code, can you prove it's working? So it's a different kind of backstory, of course, it's like the reviewer. But then what actually happened was the coding agent started vibe coding and that started proving, which basically started implementing the tests. So it's one way of like helping us write code, but helping us do review at scale. And again, there's a talk about that tomorrow as well, but kind of, there is some truth in helping us in that part as well, with vibe coding or components, or making it more visual or understandable, like questions you ask about the code base, that it's helping us to do. So yeah, definitely makes sense.
Yeah. The other side benefit I'm starting to see is that because I'm putting behaviors in as specifications and giving them to my team, in other words, I'm writing them down in enough detail that something can actually interpret that and try to implement that. Over time, you have written documentation as to what the system does. And occasionally what I'll do is basically say, okay, team, go look at our team documentation and go validate that we are actually still meeting spec and still meeting the requirements, and that we haven't over time kind of forgotten about this requirement or that requirement. Because what agents do is they, when they reach their token limit size, they do what's called compression, right? They'll take a look at what they've got in memory and giving to the LLM, and they'll say, okay, I don't need this, I don't need that, I don't need that. And what's happening when they do that? Sometimes they're forgetting about requirements that were implemented 2 months ago. Right? So every once in a while I'll do that, but what that also means is I can have my Claude-Flow team, okay, take our requirements in this library of markdown files and produce a nice document that I can show to management. Yeah, I can do that. And granted, it may not be exactly what I'll hand to my boss, but I'll get something a lot closer and in a lot less time than I would have otherwise. And so that has value too. I've seen one team actually basically use MCP tooling to update, have their Claude team update Confluence documentation based off of changes you're making or whatnot. And that has value too, because not everybody in the management chain wants to hit a Git repo and look at a markdown file. So,
You do the same thing with like, Atlassian MCP for Jira tickets.
I'm sorry?
The same thing you just mentioned with using Atlassian MCP to update Confluence or create new docs. The same thing with
Yeah.
working through Jira epics and projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, and in fact, actually, that gets me into another one of my soapboxes. Documentation requirements at a code level are changing now, right? If I can point Claude-Code or Claude-Flow or Cursor or one of these tools at a section of code and tell it, hey, explain to me what this thing does, I don't need that static documentation in the same way I used to. Yes?
That becomes, to me, that becomes more like the prompts are important, or the specs are important, because you never should document what code does. You should document why you did it.
That's right.
Because if you can't read the code, the code is self-documenting in some ways, and I'm not trying to be,
Yeah,
flippant on that, but the code tells you exactly what it does. You don't have to say that in English.
right.
But you should say why you did it, or what it's connected to, or what are some key things.
And-
That's important. And I think now the specs are equally as important there.
I think you're absolutely right, because that's part that Cursor or Claude-Code can't tell you looking at the code. They can't tell you why you did X, Y, or Z. But your specs probably do.
Or your commit history.
Yeah, but those are large too, so. Other,
Sorry. Which one of the 12 factors have you seen the swarm struggle with the most?
which one of the 12 factors have I seen Claude struggle with the most? The thing that frequently comes up is sticky sessions in session state, because that kills scale up, dynamic scalability, and also kills failover. All right. It actually, if you look at legacy Java apps, and I don't want to get into a religious war, I have a love-hate relationship, mostly hate, with Spring on the Java side, but it incents people to put default creds in Spring property files. And it incents, I mean, I'm not fourth quarter, I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking the decision that led into that kind of architecture where that's incented. But the truth is, Spring apps are very hard to inject configuration into. And that's one of the things you want to do. So when you're talking Java apps, configuration is another stumbling block that I see quite a bit. And I'm not I did Java for a decade and a half. I wrote a couple books on it, right? So I come from that world, so I'm not dinging it, but Java's the new COBOL.
What's your preferred language now?
My preferred language is, it depends. If I'm building an agent or MCP tooling, it's Python. And the reason is that the tooling is stronger there as far as third-party tools. Otherwise, it's probably Golang. And since you asked the question, oftentimes when I specify a new application, I don't micromanage the tooling choice. I let my team recommend what they want to do. And if I disagree with it, I look at it as an architect and I disagree with it, I may add a constraint and tell it to replan. But what I find is by micromanaging it up front, I learn less. Sometimes they come up with ideas that are really nice that I didn't think of.
It seems like Python and TypeScript are the lead
Yes, and agents for the same reason. All right. Having said that, you know, I know people doing it in Golang. One of the things I like about Rust or Golang is the fact that it's truly write once, you know, compile for any platform, and it works the same way pretty much everywhere unless you're doing device driver level stuff.
I think the key word in that sentence was compile.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons why Docker uses Golang, Terraform uses Golang, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of products use Golang because they don't want to deal with different executables for different platforms.
It's also beautifully packaged. You get a binary.
Yeah, you get a binary.
You don't do a pip install somewhere and hope that it works.
Yep, that is true. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good conversation.
All right.
Love your wisdom just coming out.
I am, and before we get more shrinkage, I am really sorry that the workshop portion of this didn't work out as well as planned, but I appreciate the fact that people stayed and conversed about this stuff anyway.
And I want to thank you, like, for recovering and doing this, because that's...
Thank you.